Firm Cushman & Wakefield believes the U.S. office market will fully recover in 12 to 18 months after U.S. GDP returns to pre-COVID levels, after seeing a 45% decrease in leasing revenue for Q2. Joining us this morning following their earnings is CEO Brett White. Brett, it's great to have you back. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
So 12 to 18 months after we get back to pre-COVID GDP. So we're talking, it sounds like maybe a 2.5-year phenomenon?
I think that's about right. We're forecasting that we should see the office market recover sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. And that will, as you mentioned, that'll occur post the GDP recovery, which we think will be about 18 months to 2 years.
All right. In the nearer term, people have some dire predictions about what may happen to commercial real estate, at least in urban centers, in the next 6 to 12 months. Is it your sense that we are going to have to endure worse pain before we get to an area that's better?
No doubt. And again, it's, as we've talked about before, it's different by asset class. But let's talk about U.S. office. I think that's where most of the attention is. So we're forecasting that U.S. office vacancies could go as high as 15 to 18% over the next 2.5 years. That would imply a rent decline of something in the 5 to 15% range, which is painful. And that rent decline, those vacancies increasing, that forecast right now is what has created the bid-ask spread on the trading of these properties until sellers, there's a consensus view among sellers that that is where this market is heading. We're still going to have this bid-ask spread that slows down transaction activity. But yeah, we're going to feel some more pain before things get better.
Manhattan, the largest office market in the country by far, of course. You know, I think may have been with you, but with others as well. Previous conversations about elevator traffic when people get back to work and how they would do that hasn't materialized because people are not going back. Even though the office buildings are open in Manhattan, most businesses are saying don't bother until there's a vaccine, it feels like. Is that kind of what you expect at this point?
Well, it's not what we expected. And when you and I spoke about this 6 weeks ago, we were talking about the elevator queues, the problems people are going to have in the buildings. And you're right. We're not having any problems in the buildings because people aren't going back. And it's really interesting, Dave, as you look around the country, most businesses are open in one form or another. Most office businesses are open in one form or another. Most of them have said, we'll take back 20, 30% of our employees. And yet you walk into the office and there's half a dozen people there. And I think that what we're seeing is our employees, your employees, everyone's employees are voting with their feet. They don't feel safe, and they also don't feel it's worth the hassle because they're not required to go to work. It's not worth the hassle to go back to the office right now. Now, that being said, there is no doubt that as things improve with the pandemic, people are pining to get back to work. Our surveys, we've talked about it before, David, 90% of people we survey across 100 companies around the world say they do want to get back to the office.
You know, Brad, I'd love to get your broader take here as well on sort of how many people will be working remotely. We got kind of two separate things from Facebook. On the conference call last week, Mark Zuckerberg said he could see as many as 50% of his employees within the next 5 to 10 years working remotely. At the same time, they just signed that lease for over 700,000 square feet in, not far from Midtown. What do you think the new world looks like when we keep talking about how many people will never come back to the office?
Right. Well, and again, we've all talked about this before. I'd get through the rhetoric a little bit and watch how people actually act. And so certainly there are a small number of firms that are publicly saying we're not sending people back ever.